And we're live. Good evening, everybody.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're live, boys.
All right.
It's your boy. No, I'm just kidding.
DJ check out.
No. But yes, this is episode 19 of Flippin Tin. As always, I'm Jake with Longleaf Reptilia.
I am Sky of Hail the Scales. This is
And I'm
fucking
Gabe.
Flippin Tin. God damn
He's
it,
Gabe.
Fuck. God damn it.
Guys, I really got to get the name going. I gotta do it.
Oh my god. Why was I the only one cracking a tinny tonight?
Because
Also?
I'm sick, my boy. I ain't got no tin to crack.
Yeah, I feel like I'm about to have a heart attack and I don't want to drink, but I'm still over here cracking tinnies, bro.
You know, I'm slacking. I'm slacking.
I'll take another cough drop.
Take a cough drop and a Zen. That'll make up for it.
I've already got the Zen in, so that's just gonna happen.
You fucking bet.
But yes, so jeez. Freaking killer, dude. But yes, we have extra face here tonight, Mr. Gabe. He's gonna be joining us on a couple episodes. He's already been with us. He had his own episode. He was with us for another. He's gonna be with us for at least 2 more, but he's pretty much gonna be our extra guy on here whenever we need somebody else. So Gabe, welcome again. Thank you for joining us this evening.
It's the Schuler man.
Yeah, man.
Schuler man.
And Keller, my mom will be down next week. If you want to come to Florida and visit us, we can all be a happy family together.
This guy can beat his dad for the first time.
I can finally feel like I have a father.
Oh man. But what's up, fellas? Any updates from the boys?
I don't know. You been doing anything? You herped yet, or did you do anything?
No, man. I've been
Busy.
balls to the wall with everything else, and I was gonna try and go last week, but never got around to it. And now it's cold, but apparently it's supposed to warm up again next week, so I might try and get out. I did see a snake on my road though, and I almost smashed it. And it was on a high traffic area, so by the time I turned around, it was gone. So hopefully it didn't die.
If it was gone, it probably didn't get smashed then, right?
I hope so. I hope so.
What do you any guess on what it was?
It was a rat snake.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, I could pretty much tell from the look of it. I swerved, and my girl was like, "What the hell was that?" I was like, "It was a snake." She was like, "How'd you see it?" I was like, "How'd you didn't?" The thing was like 4 feet long in the middle of the road.
See, bro, that's anyone that rides with me. I'm always like pointing shit out, and I'm like, "Did you see that?" And they're like, "See what?" I'm like, "How the fuck did you not see that?" Like,
I would get it. I get it for small stuff like, your little micro species, but my God, this was like a 4-foot rat snake in the middle of the road. Like,
Was it a boy or a girl?
That was definitely a female.
Female for sure.
Definitely a female for sure.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, no, I really haven't been out much. And I will apologize for tonight. I am a little under the weather, but we're getting there. So yeah, here we are. Sky, I know you've been doing a little bit lately.
Yeah, dude, I've just been I can't remember how many episodes it was ago that we were the last guest that we had the pleasure of talking to through Gabe. Why can't I think of it? Sean, right?
Sean. Yeah, Sean.
Yeah, Sean.
Was he our last guest?
Our last guest with Gabe.
Oh, okay.
You had one after that.
Yeah, I don't know, just like that conversation with him and just like all that stuff, it like re-sparked some stuff. Wanted to get back, started hitting my local areas hard, but I wasn't finding shit, so I was just hitting new roads, finding new stuff. But one of the homies hit me up and was like, "Yo, bro, let's go hit some spots." And we've kind of just been slaying it the past couple weekends. I was able to tick off my Florida rough green finally, so now I got my lifer and my Florida lifer, so that was stoked. And I gotta say, man, I mean, obviously there's variability between everything, But the one that I found, or the ones that we found up in Francis Marion, tons of blue, like more of like a real paler belly to them. The one I found out here was like straight up freaking two-tone. I mean, it was
Really?
neon banana yellow, and then just a straight line green. I put it up as a Flippin Tin story for tonight to come check out the live. But if you guys go check out the page, I put up a picture of that snake. I think rough greens get looked over as a common bycatch species, but man, they're so cool. They've eluded me alive for so long. So for this year to be able to see it, this many live ones, and I think it's pretty cool. But when I was releasing the snake, I just put it off the road back into the bushes. And when I put it into the bushes, it instantly blended in, but it got right next to a grasshopper. And I can only assume it's the same little grasshoppers that they eat.
Yeah.
Dude, the grasshopper was green and yellow. The snake was green and yellow. The plant was green with some little freaking yellow buds on it. I was just like, dude, these things are just like if you were walking by, you'd never see any of this stuff. And just to take that little picture, 4x4 square and take it in was just so awesome to see prey and predator and them both blending into their environment so perfectly. And then it making sense why this is an insectivore eating snake rather than it going after lizards and stuff at that size. So it was just cool to see all that. I could ramble about rough greens and the nerdy stuff like that, but that was cool. I was able to, I honored Fulvius Apparel in the greatest way possible. I've worn my Masticophis outfit, which is my hat and shirt from Smitty, twice now. The first time I got a speeding ticket, my first ever speeding ticket. So you can only wear the fastest snake shirt and get a speeding ticket, apparently. And then after that, I got re-blessed by getting a couple more. So that was dope. And then got a whole handful of pygmies and then a couple other things. Got an awesome looking darker corn snake, a couple DORs, DOR freaking EDB and a DOR coral. So that was unfortunate, but yeah, there was fruits to the labor, but yeah, it was just good to get out and get some luck again. And just finding some new roads kind of local and hitting them hard and shit. So just been trying to stay at it. But this cold, I'm in my hoodie and everything because I'm a Florida boy. It's 55 degrees out right now. I'm freaking cold. But I've been waiting for this little cold snap because tiger salamander season, baby. We've been talking about manders all year on this podcast, and I'm trying to bring it to fruition. Got a couple tips on some possible albinos. So gonna go do a bunch of checking out of that stuff and see what we can bring up. Yeah. But worst comes to worst, I at least want to bring some cool stories and hopefully some cool pictures of some tiger salamanders here soon.
Find them, dude. They're not common in my area at all.
No.
That's one I still need to find for the state too.
I didn't even know they were native to South Carolina, to be honest.
Barely.
Barely.
They're here. They're just pretty uncommon.
Good stuff, man.
I did find that black swamp snake weird.
I gotta walk away for 1 second.
Which is really out of season.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, man, that's.
Yeah, it was heavy rain. It was during the day. I was like, what are you doing?
That's the first time you saw one there too, right?
Mm-hmm. That's a new it might be a new record that far into the county. But I'm not certain that it is, but as far as I know, there's no record there of them. But I mean, it doesn't surprise me it was there. I mean, it's a swamp.
Yeah.
Swamp snakes live in swamps.
Yeah. Didn't surprise me at all that you found it. I hadn't remembered you ever told me.
I was more shocked about seeing it the time of day and time of year that I did. And of course,
yeah, because they're more of like a midsummer.
Spring, they're right? More of they like it a lot warmer. They like those warm, humid nights usually. So you're going to find them usually when it's a lot warmer and that humidity is bumped up. To find it in the fall with this cooler weather, I think the only reason it moved was all the heavy rain. We had no rain for a while, and then we got a bunch of rain like 2 days in a row, and I think that's what did it.
What are we talking about?
The black swamp snake I found a couple weeks ago.
Oh yeah, that was nice, man. That was a good one. That was a good find. Tyson, it's I'm sure you could find him up there in the Panhandle. I'm going to be looking a little north central area, Gulf side. So yeah, hit me a DM on Instagram, dude. But
I might make a trip down there to go look for some manders with you.
Me and the goat are going to be on it. I told him I was going to get him, and he got all freaking jazzed up. And so now we are going to do what's called the Tenderloin Tag Team on the Tigers.
That's an odd term for that.
That's all I could come up with that fast. I'm sorry, brain fart.
Tenderloin Tag Team.
You got to be gentle with them, bro. They got sensitive skin.
Oh my god, this is interesting. Gabe, since our last show with you, you found quite a few things. You've been killing it with some rattlesnakes lately. So tell us about some stuff you found.
Yeah, man. It's been a while since I've been on. I've been finding a lot of, well, not recently, but within the last month and a half or so, been finding a lot of rattlesnakes. Pygmies, cane breaks. It typical fall things. Can't seem to find a hognose this fall for some reason, but I haven't really had time to look. But anyways, I found some rattlesnakes, some rat snakes, tons of box turtles this year, man.
I tell you, man, it was the year of the box turtle.
This might be one of my best years for box turtles.
Yeah,
we slayed box turtles, bro.
Yeah, I flipped that box turtle twice now. It was a week and a half apart, and I flipped the same box turtle twice.
Did you carve your name in this belly plaster?
No, I painted the shell. That's what you do, right?
You spray painted.
You spray painted it shell.
I painted my name on the top. That's what you do. Right?
Only to go for tortoises.
Yeah, only to go for tortoises.
Oh my!
That was a joke.
We don't do that. Everybody, shut up. No.
No, but yeah, man, it's been a great year for box turtles. I've actually got to find several box turtles multiple times.
Sorry, I just seen Tyson's comment. He said, maybe I don't want to go after all. Talking about the Tenderloin Tag Team, bro. Come on, man. We're gentle.
You've never been Herbalist guy. Oh man. But I think one of the coolest box turtle finds for me this year was when we were out by Harry in the Tallahassee area. We were walking a burn, and I found one like in a fresh burn, just like floating in a puddle. It was just like in a deep puddle, like almost completely submerged in it. It just had its head poking out. I was like, what the hell is this thing doing?
That was the bright yellow one too, right?
Yeah, it was really pretty. I'm pretty sure
that thing was super yellow, if I do remember correctly. That was awesome. Because we found like one or two unfortunately burned deceased ones, right? Or were they crusty ones, and then you found the one that was in the pond?
I found one that was dead from the fire, and then we found one or two live, and then we found all the snapping turtles.
Yeah, I remember we found one or two crusty ones or something, and then you found that bright yellow one, and we were like, hell yeah.
Then you found the one scurrying through the bushel thistle and the Francis Mary.
That was Francis Mary.
That was funny, man. I think that one those were cool though, just because of like how, for one, just finding them so close to each other was cool, but how different they were.
Yeah, that contrast was like awesome.
Super dark and orange. The other one was really just yellowy, and it was cool.
Definitely cool how much variation you can have in them,
Yeah. Oh, I bet you I found close to 20 box turtles this year.
Really?
Yeah, dude.
I haven't been keeping count, but
no, I haven't counted. I know you've probably found more than that.
I think I've probably found every bit of 30, 35 box turtles this year.
Yeah, dude. It's been a lot. There was one, I was out driving to WMA. It was in the middle of the day, me and my girl just wanted to go for a drive, so we went out and I was just driving around and saw this one on a dirt road just hauling ass. It was like almost 100 degrees out, and this thing was like running across this road. I was like, "God damn, boy!" So I hopped out and grabbed it, and it was probably the ugliest one I've seen all year, but still cool nonetheless.
Hey, bro, we don't judge.
No, man,
We're still friends with you, dude.
Yeah, I know. That's how it goes. Oh man. Yeah, in other news, we're going to Black Box this weekend to go pick up our orders. So definitely check out Black Box Cages.
You should do some Mandarin while you're in that area.
And man, it's a 4.5 hour trip just there, and we're doing it there back in a day. Ain't doing no Mandarin.
What's an extra hour or two if you get to find some lifers?
It's in Georgia, so I wouldn't even know where to go.
A pond, a sewage seep.
Pond, idiot.
Oh god.
But yeah,
looking at wet places.
Yeah, it was a fucking drainage ditch, bro.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but any other updates from me, fellas?
Not that I can think of, man.
Okay,
Nothing too crazy.
Well, normally this is when we would do write-ins, but we are not going to do write-ins this weekend. Partially because I'm sick, partially because we wanted to make more time for our guest. So with that said, we will introduce our guest for the evening. And Gabe, I will let you introduce our guest tonight, as you know her the best.
Honorary Gabe.
All right,
honorary Gabe.
So tonight our guest is Maddie Prickett. She's a field biologist. And she's going to be on with us tonight talking about pine snakes, which are, in my opinion, one of the best North American colubrids, and one that's very near and dear to both mine and Maddie's hearts.
All of our hearts.
All of our hearts, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Pitchiophis is great.
Go Pits, go Pines.
Absolutely.
How you doing tonight, Maddie?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Good.
We're doing good. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And we've told y'all that we're going to be doing some more species-specific episodes. And I believe we've done one species-specific already. Have we? I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. I think
yeah.
I don't remember what it was. We did turtles. That's right. We did turtles with Jack.
We did turtles, and then we did the croat croat study, kind of, right?
Oh, yeah, with Sean. But yeah, so this is going to be one dedicated to pine snakes. We're going to go over more stuff that Maddie's done as a field biologist. But yeah, this is going to be mostly focused on pine snakes. So yeah, with that, Maddie, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself and how you got, where you are today and who you work for and all that.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Maddie Prickett. I'm from Northeast Alabama. I was born and raised in the Jacksonville area, so mountainous, a little bit different than the coastal plains where I work now. I'm currently working as a field biologist for the Amphibian and Reptile Conservancy. But starting out, I always really liked herbs as a kid. I grew up on a 680-acre cotton farm, so we farmed cotton and poultry, my family did, and we had lots of places to run around and hide and stay out in the woods all the time. So we'd catch frogs and snakes and stuff. And of course, my parents never let us keep stuff in the house. So I didn't really get to start keeping until I was probably a teenager into college age, but always just finding frogs and toads around the house and snakes and whatever I could. And then when I got older, I started working as a keeper, and I met people, and I was like, there are people that actually do this for fun. Like, people herp, like this is a real thing. I want to hang out with those people. And so started hanging out with some herpers, and when I was a teenager, and got mentored by some really cool people. But I started working as a keeper. So I had never been able to keep stuff myself, but I started working with an educational outreach organization in the state of Alabama that had been around for a long time. It was founded by a herpetologist, and his family kind of continued on doing a lot of educational programs in schools and stuff, and with Alabama Power and a lot of medical schools and whatnot. So we were doing that, and I was working as a keeper, volunteering at first, and it kind of turned into a paid position really quickly. And so all throughout high school and into college, I worked as a keeper, helping keep a really, really big captive collection of native amphibians and reptiles, and then also a lot of exotic stuff. So we did a lot of snake education, talking about, a lot of the common stuff you'd see. Of course, we weren't bringing, green snakes and midland water snakes and things like that, but making sure we had those staple snakes that a lot of people come across in their lifetime, and really just doing the good work, letting people know about snakes and understanding, why you don't have to be afraid of snakes and what to do if you're bitten by a snake and things like that. So I learned a lot about keeping then, and it kind of morphed into my own collection. And I worked with them through college. And when I got to college, I was actually a medical student, a pre-medical student. I was headed to medical school, but always had loved herps and herping. So kind of fell into the nitty-gritty biologist grind. And my parents were very happy with me. When I graduated college, I had a field job lined up, and I was like, well, I think I'll just take a little bit of time off before I go to medical school, and I'll work this job. And they were like, yeah, you're on a slippery slope. So of course ended up in the field, and now I'm working as a full-time biologist and hoping to pursue an academic career. I'd love to have a PhD and do research. That's kind of where my heart's at. So that's how I got here. I went to Jacksonville State University for college and worked with a great herpetologist there, Dr. Grover Brown. He's a turtle guy, loves Sternothorus. He loves conosternids, and so that was pretty cool. But snakes are kind of where my heart's at. But I get to work with all kind of species. With the organization that I work for a nonprofit, the Amphibian and Reptile Conservancy. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit, but really big. We're doing a national thing. So working with herps in all kinds of different states. I think we were founded here in the Francis Marion in the area where I work about 15 years ago, I think. And since 2020, when our founder director, Jeff Holmes, handed over the reins to JJ Apodaca. He's a great geneticist. He has Tangled Bank Conservation. You might have heard of their lab. But we had one parka, which is a priority amphibian and reptile conservation area in 2020. And since 2020, we have 22 parkas in 14 states. So we're working in the Southeast, the Southwest. We work in the Southern Appalachians. We work in the Red Hills. We work in the Bankhead. There's endemic species there in Alabama. So we're working all over the place and spreading out, doing lots of good work. So that's really, really cool. And, we just kind of bridge the gap in between. We work with a lot of state and federal agencies and other nonprofits. And, all these people are working to conserve a lot of these wild herp species. And so there's little cracks that form in between all those agencies. So we just kind of come in and we partner with everyone and we try to fill the gaps and do as much as we possibly can. So really cool job. Really enjoy what I get to do. It's nice to be on the ground and get to see, herp conservation come into fruition. Because a lot of times, you're doing work and you don't get to see it for 10, 20 years, but we actually get to see what's going on and, get to work with it one-on-one is awesome. So really enjoy my job. And even though it's not the big bucks, they pay us the small bucks for doing what we do. Because a lot of our money comes from, public grants and funds that we can get from applying for stuff through the government and all. And so, but a lot of it's just donations as well. So a really cool job, but definitely not the most highest paying career. But if it's what you love doing, it's worth it. So that's where I'm at and what I'm doing right now.
AKA everybody should consider donating to ARC.
Absolutely. Yeah. Check out our websites and social medias and stuff. ARC Protects, or if you Google Amphibian and Reptile Conservancy, you'll probably come across us. But yeah, check us out, social media and our website.
That's awesome. I love it.
Sounds like a freaking dream job that we'd all want to do. That's for sure. I mean,
when you see the paycheck stubs,
except for that, right? Yeah,
it's fun.
This is why you become a volunteer.
Yeah, and in case anybody doesn't know, Gabe volunteers for ARC.
He does. Our number 3 volunteer.
That's right. That's right. I'll take it.
He's number 1.
I was saying, because Gabe, you've been volunteering with ARC for 7-8 years now.
No, I don't. Since like 2017. 2017.
So 7 years.
Wow. Yeah. Oh wow. That was not long ago.
I hit the nail on the head, and you're like, no.
Math be mathing, bro.
Yeah, math be hard.
Time flies.
Chris Sanchez says Gabe is my baby daddy. Mari confirmed it.
Oh, I need you to name him Gabe the Third.
Gabe the Third.
Can't be. I'm the second. It can't be the second.
That's right.
Fourth, because there's another.
We don't know that there's another one out
one of my study animals is actually after Gabe. It's really not, but they have the same name, and he acts just like Gabe. He's hard to handle. Can't find him ever. Doesn't cooperate. So Gabe the fourth.
He's a pine snake after my own heart.
Yeah.
He's probably ugly as shit too.
He's actually really
That's how I get away with it.
You weren't supposed to say that.
Yeah.
That's funny. So I know you've kept a little bit. Let's start with the basics. What did you start keeping? That kind of got you into herps a little bit.
The first thing I probably ever kept was coincidentally a mole king snake. So they pop up in ranch. This was so I had a mentor that was in his 50s, and in the area that I grew up in, there's mole kings are a little bit more common than they are here in the coastal plain and in certain areas. But so they pop up in random spots. They're so hard to pinpoint, and they're hard to target. But this random one popped up. It was actually in an elementary school. And a friend of mine picked it up and he's like, I think you could he's like, I really don't even know where this thing goes. He's like, I think you could kind of, keep it for a little while. And so that's probably the first thing I ever kept, but colubrids, mole kings and corns. Then quickly got over into venomous stuff. Love an eastern diamondback, rattlesnakes, something about that just does something for me. I love rattlesnakes. So I've kept a lot of different rattlesnakes, a lot of native stuff. You can't really keep exotic venomous in Alabama. So kept any native venomous snake that I could keep. That was it's kind of my go-to. But love colubrids. I've kept a lot of exotic stuff too. I've kept big lizards, monitors, big constrictors.
Sky's a monitor, man.
Yeah.
What kind of monitors?
Blackthroat monitors, water monitors, Asian water monitors.
Okay, big boys.
Yeah, not the easiest to tame and keep, but got to do that. Help keep some crocodilians. A lot of American alligators and stuff when I was working as a keeper. A lot of exotic stuff, just really random stuff, like things so when you're doing educational programs, you got to have something to get the kids' attention. They look at a lot of snakes and they think they're cool. But then when you show up with a tortoise, I love tortoises. I have an Aldabra tortoise up in Alabama that's being kept by a friend. I keep Timor Island snake neck turtles from Tom Crutchfield. I got a pair of those.
Yeah, some snake necks are sick. Jake necks. That's what we
call
them
around
Jake
here
now.
I've kept cyclura. I've kept big iguanas before. All kinds of stuff, really. I mean, so I've kept cat. You gotta have something to catch their attention. With either a tortoise that's really cool, or I have creepy pancake tortoises. They may be my favorite because they're small, they're easy to keep, and they just have great personalities.
Pancakes are the superior tortoises.
They're really cool.
Other than Russians,
I don't know. I think I'd take a pancake over a Russian.
Okay.
I'll take a slapjack tortoise any day over a Russian.
Yeah, tortoise to a Russian.
You darn right. Russians are the most underappreciated tortoise out there. They're great.
Okay, Gabe, you can shut up now.
Yeah, but you gotta have something. So you would Calabar pythons or blood pythons, or I've kept chondros and jungle carpets, and I've kept a lot of stuff.
So everything, basically.
No, I mean not everything. But I've kept a lot of random things. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's sick. And right now, you just keep tortoises, right?
I've got a few snakes, but I live in field houses, so can't really keep a whole lot of stuff. But yeah, mainly tortoises right now.
Nice.
Can't get rid of my tortoises. They gotta stay.
Nice.
Cool.
They live forever, anyways.
Yeah, you just keep passing them on.
Go from generation to generation.
I have an Aldabra that I was gifted for Christmas when I was 18, and I've had it for 5 or 6 years now, and that thing's gonna live for a long time. Yeah, it's
nice.
It's cool, but it's also somebody's got to keep it one day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we dive headfirst into pine snakes, give us a little, day to day, what's it like being a field biologist? Because I think most people who listen to this, it's like that would have been the dream at one point. Most of us didn't go that route, but you actually did. So give us what's a day in the life like?
Yeah, so some field biologists, they work with just one species, especially if they're doing research or if they're more of an academic route. But luckily I get to, even with some of my coworkers, they work with just one really imperiled species. But I kind of have a cool job in the area that I'm at. So it's one of our oldest parkas, and so we're kind of 10 years ahead of some of these other projects. And so I get to work with different species all the time. So we have our spotted turtle seasons. We sample for those, and we take DNA, and we get to assist with flatwood, actually frosted flatwood, so cingulatum, flatwood salamander surveys, and looking for eggs, and pine snakes and southern hognose snakes. And sometimes eastern diamondbacks, rattlesnakes. I get to help with diamondback terrapin surveys. We do gopher frogs, so we have really great populations of gopher frogs. We're one of the only people that really are able to do a lot of work with gopher frogs in the state of South Carolina, so that's really cool. We head start those and get to
What's
do
a gopher frog? I'm sorry, I've never heard of that.
a gopher frog.
Yeah.
You guys in Florida, don't y'all have the crawfish frogs?
Well, they have gopher frogs too.
Well, you have the gopher frogs too. Don't they have an overlap of the?
Yeah, so you get crawfish frogs and gopher frogs.
Yeah, Sky, you've seen a crawfish frog down there, right?
I'm
He's
Googling
Googling it now.
So they look like you have gopher frogs too. I didn't know if you'd seen a
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I've seen one of these before.
Yeah.
So gopher frogs are super endangered because they're like flatwood salamanders. They require this really great upland habitat, which of course we all know in the Southeast is hard to come by. But they're also just super opportunistic with their ponds. Their ponds get destroyed by habitat destruction or runoff or whatever. And so but they're also very selective in their breeding. So they only breed during these really heavy rain events. And so even for us as biologists, like trying to survey for these frogs, we run audio recorders, which we call them like ARUs for short. And we have this special software that was developed by the Bird Lab at Cornell. And we use it for our frog calls. So we run these audio recorders. You put them on a tree, kind of like a trail camera. And so we can run those and we can kind of estimate sometimes when we think they're going to breed, especially during like hurricanes or a really big tropical storm. But so we run those audio recorders and we go out and we pull that and it will tell us if they called. And if they have called and we hear a high chorus, which means like the males that just come to the pond, the females are there as well. We can go in and we do egg mass surveys. So we look for those eggs. And then if we have a successful breeding event here, we work with the Fish and Wildlife Service. So a lot of their
there you go.
Yeah, that's a gopher frog. But we head start those. So we'll take the eggs out of the pond. We take a couple eggs for DNA analysis, and then we take a portion of the eggs, about 50, and they have these massive egg masses. They look like spotted salamander egg masses. They're really firm for a frog. They're not as loose as some Anuran egg masses. And so when you take a portion of those egg masses, we take like 50, and there's still hundreds of them that are left. We take them and we will hatch them out, raise them, and then we actually raise them in a stock tank. So we emulate a pond, and we can raise those to metamorphosis. And then we go in and we install artificial refugia around the pond, and we can actually release those head-started gopher frogs that have, because that's the most vulnerable stage in their life. When they're in the pond, they're tadpoles. They get eaten and predated, or the pond could dry down. Sometimes we have to do what they call emergency salvage, where we'll go in and we'll pull, when the water levels are dropping dangerously low, we'll pull them out like in a drought event or something like that. Because they do use ephemeral wetlands, like a lot of amphibians do, because they don't want the presence of fish. And so we get to do a lot of stuff with that. We release gopher frogs every year, thousands of them. We have some other facilities in the state that also help us raise them. And so that's pretty cool. And we're really doing a lot of stuff to the numbers of gopher frogs here. They're expanding, they're moving out. We do a lot of habitat restoration. So being a biologist, you're working with the animal, but you're also worried about their habitat. You want to know, is this going to be developed? What can we do here? Is this the way that this has been for, hundreds of years? Has this been modified? Can we put more fire here? Could we thin these uplands out and make it more hospitable to these animals? And so not only do we get to work with animals and we get to collect data, but we also get to do a lot of habitat restoration. So we get to go in with the chainsaws and the heavy equipment, and we get to clean out stuff and make it better for them. And hopefully it'll stay that way. We get to make recommendations to the Forest Service and the state and the federal government about how these areas should be managed for these species, and how we can make it better. So it's really cool to get to do that and see the populations rise when you're doing your surveys every year, and see that you're really making a difference and something's happening there. So that's really cool.
That's awesome. This isn't nearly remotely as cool as a gopher frog thing, but you talked about like how, certain frogs will just lay eggs in, essentially puddles. There was this area behind my old house, and every time it rained, it would flood, in there, and it would basically be a giant puddle, but it always dried up. And southern toads would always go back there and lay all these eggs. And my mom was a huge, nature nerd. So one day we collected, as many of the eggs as we could, because it was going to dry up in a couple days, and put them in a tank, hatched them out. We, fed these tadpoles, and, we had them all in this big tank. And next thing we know, we had all these little tiny frogs like crawling out of the tank, up the side of the glass. And Mom's like, we got to do something with these. So ended up having to get rid of them all. But it was pretty cool just to go through that process, But it's just like, come on, man. Find a better spot to lay these things. This is a freaking puddle. Do better. you know.
It's, some frog species, it's like they have this like quantity over quality thing where they just lay a million eggs everywhere, and then you have some species like a gopher frog where their eggs develop really fast, so they just throw eggs everywhere and just hope they develop. 90% of the babies probably get eaten or whatever, but you see toads hopping everywhere. But then you got some of these species that are like so delicate, so careful with the way that they breed and the way that they place these eggs, and then their eggs stay in that pond for like 6 months. But you just like southern toads and spadefoot toads are terrible too. Like they can hatch in like 2 weeks. Just throw eggs everywhere. Just every puddle. That's literally what they do. They go out in the rain. They just find every puddle that they can. It's a bucket, whatever. They just throw eggs everywhere.
Yeah.
Just cast this massive.
Because I've seen that too, where it's just like this tiny puddle, but there's like hundreds of these tadpoles in like this tiny itty bitty space, and I'm like, dude, it's just ridiculous.
It's wild. Even some scientists have I don't know if this would be ethical now, but they've done it before. They've taken some of those fast developing tadpoles and they like put them in a tank and like emulate a pond and dry it as fast as they possibly can and see how fast they can actually hatch. And some of those toads can develop like so fast. It's crazy when you put them under stressful conditions, how quick they can actually develop. I think that's really cool. That you can force them to develop like that. That's wild.
Well, I know some poison dart frogs are like that as well because they're laying them in the middle of bromeliads and stuff. And so they'll develop super quick.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Speaking of the spadefoots and the southern toads, the spawns out here this year were insane because of the rains and the storms. I was driving through some of the areas that are kind of like slower moving roads. There was black patches in the road where it looked like there was just something in the road, but it was literally just thousands upon thousands of either spadefoots or southerns, and it's just like, oh my god. Yeah. How many are you? Like, fucking so. Like,
I think this is one of the best spadefoot years I've seen in quite a few years.
Yeah, same. I haven't seen that many, and they're everywhere right now.
I love spadefoots, man.
That was my first pet hurt.
Yes. Yeah, what was his name? Jabba? Didn't you tell me his name?
I overfed him. He was like fat like Jabba the Hutt. He was so cool, man.
You tell me and Gabe are friends. He brings up a spadefoot. I'm like, oh yeah, old Jabba.
Old Jabba. Jabba, homie. Peace out.
That's the homie. Forward out for Jabba.
That's right.
Oh man, that's funny. Well, let's get into the pine snake research. Let's I don't really know how to start it, but talk about their some of their habits, time of day, what you guys actually do to monitor them, and obviously where you can. Get into some of the research.
Yeah. So pine snakes, of course, they're a longleaf species or a sandal species, like we probably all know that, but they really like this open, like longleaf pine oak scrub habitat, with looser, sandier soils. And so they use that habitat, which, like I said earlier, unfortunately in the Southeast, this is the story of Southeastern herpetofauna, is high and dry gets developed. And so unfortunately for pine snakes, they love high and dry. A lot of these upland species do. And so it's, those where our roads and our houses and our subdivisions go. And so they really struggle with habitat fragmentation and development, which has even become an issue here lately of, genetics. Because you get these small little pockets of them that this longleaf habitat is just destroyed. And so you get these small fragmented pockets. And so there's been a lot of work done lately of in the last 10, 20 years of trying to connect some of these species and make land corridors so that we don't get this, inbreeding of these small populations. But yeah, they thrive in really hot temperatures. A lot of snakes, with pine snakes, you think, if it's really hot outside, really muggy, you're probably not going to see snakes. That's probably not a good day to go out and road cruise or hike. But pine snakes seem to operate at a really high temperature, but it's because they're a burrowing species. They stand aground a lot. They're super big, muscular snakes. They're really kind of like, a lot of people love indigos, but pine snakes are like right there too. They're big, muscular snakes in the same ways that a hognose has this really defined rostral scale. They have the same thing. They can dig. I literally have, tracking pine snakes, working with pine snakes. You can catch one on the surface and you can walk away and they'll just disappear under. They're such great diggers. They use these open pine savanna habitats, and they go. They can dig their own burrows in some places, but a lot of times they'll go in and use rodent burrows or anything in the ground like a root system, and they'll modify those burrows. And it's amazing to see this massive. I mean, pine snakes are huge snakes. They get 5, 6 feet, maybe even 7 feet long. Sometimes they're really thick bodied. They eat a lot. They're very muscular. So to think that like you could be walking over the ground and a pine snake is underneath you in these tight. I mean, you think about burrows. So you see, you've probably seen diagrams of, or if you've seen one in real life, a gopher tortoise burrow. So they're kind of just like a straight. I mean, they go back like 40, 50 feet. They go underground, but they're kind of a straight system. I mean, the gopher tortoise is obviously not wanting to curve around, but pine snakes dig these insane burrows that go like all these directions. And that's one thing that kind of becomes, you talked about studying them. So one of the easiest ways to study a pine snake, if you want to get data off of what they're doing and learn a little bit about them, is to do radio telemetry. So that's a system where you can implant or attach. A lot of times with turtles, you'll attach with epoxy to the shell. But sometimes, or certain species, you feed the transmitter to them or you put a backpack on them. But the pine snakes, because they're a big bodied snake, one of the easiest ways is to implant a radio transmitter in them. So you take this transmitter and they have a battery life in them that lasts. It depends on what kind of transmitter you're using. Some of them only last a couple weeks. Some of them last a year, 2 years, 4 or 5 years. So we use some that last about a year and a half. And they're about the transmitter itself is about the size of a quarter, maybe a little bit bigger. It's got a antenna that goes down the side of it or out the back of it. And so we have a veterinarian that puts these snakes under anesthesia once we catch them, because, with some species, it's not the juice is not worth the squeeze. With the pine snake, because we know very little about some of these certain pockets, it's worth it to do this. And so we'll have a veterinarian, we'll catch the snakes, usually using drift fences or road cruising surveys, or there's many different ways you can find pine snakes if you're lucky, because they're not easy to find. They're very secretive. And so we have a veterinarian that works with us, and she'll put them under anesthesia and very expertly implant this transmitter that this snake will carry with it for a little bit over a year. And so we bring them up out of anesthesia. The surgery goes well. She puts a few stitches. She's really good at doing it. So they make it out of the surgery with like 7 or 8 stitches. We keep them for a few days, get a meal on them, make sure they're hydrated, they're doing well, the anesthesias come back off, and then we release them into their habitat where we caught them. And then we continue to radio track them. So you've got an antenna. That radio is putting out a transmission signal, and you got a pulse rate. So like every so many seconds you get a beep, and you can tune it in. So we use a certain type of antenna that gives us a long frequency, because pine snakes like to move. So with male pine snakes in breeding season, I mean, I've worked on several different projects with pine snakes, and I've seen males move well over a kilometer in a day. Like that's a long way to move. You think about, I mean, even if you're 6 feet long, I mean, moving over a kilometer, and that's as the crow flies, because we just get like, okay, this is where he was at yesterday. Now he's displaced a kilometer. So he's probably not moving in a straight line. He's moving in a zigzag. Mm-hmm. So just think about the mass of that snake and how much they're probably eating.
Well, that's why they have such high metabolisms. Yeah, I mean, they're constantly moving like that.
It's amazing to think that a snake can accomplish that. Because, you think about indigos being these big body snakes that just take down everything in their path, and they eat everything, and they're ophiophagous, and they eat snakes, and just anything they come across to eat it, they're just going to keep moving. They have these massive home ranges. But pine snakes are very similar in a way. I mean, they move a lot, especially in breeding season when the males are looking for the females. They move all over the place. So we use that radio telemetry. We go out several times a week, and we'll track them. And we try to kind of stay back. And, we don't want to frighten the snake. But obviously, they're very, very smart as well. So they learn us. They learn our smell. And to them, maybe it's just, these big monkeys that come look at me a couple times a week. I don't know, but they learn the monkeys, and they're like, so I've had friends that do research too, and they've kind of rigged up, if they have a snake that's kind of using a burrow system for a while, they like rigged up a camera, and like they can look at the timestamps, and like 30 seconds before they walked up to this snake, or even maybe like 10 seconds, all of a sudden the snake was on the surface. And now the snake's not on the surface. It disappears right before they walk up. So a lot of times when you're tracking pine snakes, you're just tracking.
Now, do you think it's the smell, or do you think it's a combination of smell and feeling the vibrations from them?
I don't really know. I mean, I think they're really alert and just highly intelligent. I mean, you come across some snake species in the wild, and you're like, wow, this one's so not very smart. It's just, But pine snakes are not like that. And that's why they're so hard to find. I mean, they're very aware of their surroundings. And also, we were talking about with the frogs. That's a great point. Some species just tend to have that quality quantity over quality aspect of things. And so you look at that where a toad's laying, what seems like millions of eggs, hundreds of eggs every rain event, and it's just dispersing these animals. Well, the pine snakes, I mean, they have a clutch size between 8 and 20 eggs, usually around like 8 to 15. So you've got this species that's putting a lot of work into these eggs, and they're laying these eggs. They only lay eggs once a year, maybe once every other year. We're not really even sure about that. And so, they're really putting a lot of work into these young, and then these young come out and they're putting a lot of work into learning these areas. Because if you have a massive home range like that, and one thing that I've learned with tracking snakes and doing telemetry on research projects is those snakes know every hole in the ground in their home range. They know every piece of refugia. And so in my mind, it's like, how do you develop that map inside your head? And so they really just create these quality young that are very intelligent. So a pine snake has to be pretty smart. And they really intelligent animals. So it makes them hard to study, but doing the radio telemetry is really interesting because we learn a lot about them. We learn about their breeding habits, what they do, even what they eat, and then comparing all these. So you got pine snakes that span across the southeast, but every pine snake population would be a little bit different. I mean, you get species. We have a lot of data from the New Jersey pine barrens. We have a lot of data from like Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, and you compare those and what all these people have found, and like there's different little things that those pine snakes are doing, and they use different habitat types. If it's montane, if it's in the coastal plain. So just a lot of really interesting things. But pine snakes they're just awesome. I mean, there's so much to learn about them, and they're hard to study. So we don't have a massive amount of data on them. So it's really interesting to get to learn things about them.
So when that was great, by the way. That was loaded. I love it. When you have found them, are they normally like you're tracking them or wherever you come across them? Are they normally like on the move? Not really posted up by a burrow, because I feel like that's when you would lose them. Are they usually like in between burrows on the move whenever you do?
So it's really interesting. I mean, a lot of times, sometimes we'll track a snake and they'll kind of stay in an area for a few days and use that same burrow systems. But then other times we catch them and they're just constantly moving. But back to the point of like them having this massive home range, a lot of times when you catch a snake, like they're moving in an area that you've never caught them in before. You can tell that they're moving because the signal, some of them get smart after they've been handled a few times. We don't handle them very often, but we have to get weights periodically and things like that and do health assessments. When they're moving like that, sometimes you walk up on an animal and you've got this signal that's going off and you can tell, okay, this signal's moving because I was picking up from this way, now I'm picking up from that way, and it's moving around me. And then they'll just disappear into a burrow. So it's like a lot of times they're moving, and there are certain times of the year where maybe if they're getting close to winter or something, they tend to stay near an area for a long time. But in the summertime when they're doing their breeding thing and they're moving around, eating a lot of times they're moving. They're going all over the place. But they always they don't just like sit around the burrow, but they always have a place ready. If something comes up and they're frightened, they're always ready to dip into some sort of refugia. If they don't really know an area that well, they'll find somewhere. I had an experience. I was working in the Bankhead National Forest on a project with a master's student, and literally this is probably a massive 6-foot male pine snake. It was a piece of wood like maybe this small and about that wide. And that snake, I mean, we walked up on it and we're like, this is where the transmitter's going off. Like, we don't understand. And usually you wouldn't dig or anything. We just kind of lifted that piece of wood up, and that snake had skinnied under that piece of it looked like a piece of bark. And I was like, well, we could walk right over that. So they're super, super secretive. So even when they're moving, they always have somewhere to dip, somewhere to hide. So that's why it makes it so hard to hurt for them, because they're outsmart us.
Hearing you talk about them, it kind of makes me think about how we were talking about how coach whips are a level above most snakes.
Yeah.
It just goes like pine snakes are just almost like a level above that intelligence. It's just like the food chain is obviously real, and it's like it seems like with each step, obviously the intelligence and the ability to use your surroundings a little bit better, or to find a way to, like you're saying, they have a mission when they're going to do something, and regardless if they're in an area they're not familiar with, they're still going to be able to complete that mission because they know what has to be done. And it's just so cool to think that a snake can be that evolved into their surroundings, and super cool. Sorry, I'm just
it's so
the talk was geeking me up. It's so dope how awesome pine snakes can be. Just they're a whole nother step ahead above everything else.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're awesome. That's why it's just heartbreaking. You see these like here in the area that we're in, like all these subdivisions get developed. They buy off sections of the forest, and it's just like, oh, like, what are you doing? You know, they start bringing those excavators and all the land movers, and you're like, man, like you're just tearing it up. You know, like
ruining it,
yeah,
ruining everything.
been there for so long, like they're so smart, and you're just chipping away at their home range. But
yeah, and that's the thing is like, you know, when you come in with excavators and stuff like that, I'm sure they sense the presence of people coming in, especially when you're coming to a big piece of equipment. And for their entire lives, they've been able to go underground and be safe. But when an excavator's in there, that's out the freaking window, dude. So they're essentially sitting ducks when big piece of equipment come in like that, and it's heartbreaking, man. Like it's terrible. But depressing shit aside, when you know, are they more active like during? I've always looked at them as more of a diurnal species. Is that accurate, or do they move a good bit at night? Or
no, definitely the diurnal species. I've never observed one moving at night. I'm sure if push came to shove, maybe they would, but definitely, I mean, even with tracking them with radio telemetry past like 4:30, 5:30, 6 o'clock, like you're not going to catch one on the surface.
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, they're completely diurnal. I think, to the best of my knowledge and all the data that we have.
Yeah, I was just curious if you've ever, like, you know, with the tracking and stuff like that, if you've ever like actually had one moving during the night.
Well, I've never tracked them at night, but I did have this is something that hasn't been presented very much, but I had an experience where for some reason we ended up at a young pine snake burrow in the middle of the night, and I think it was because we were there, but it was definitely moving on the ground. You could see it, like it was one of those like really rooty systems, and it just kind of ducked in there, and it was definitely moving in the burrow system. So that was, but I definitely think it was because there was 3 adults standing over that, and so I'm sure when you're teeny tiny, like it sounds like giants are stepping on top of you. So maybe it was just moving to a better position, but I don't think it was willingly moving. I think we were probably
pushed it up.
Yeah.
I gotcha. What about diet? Have y'all, you know, done any studies on the diet of these things, you know, and what they're eating, when they're eating, how often they're eating?
Yeah, so there have been some diet studies done. Me in particular, I have some studies. Now we have better. So back in the day when you were studying diet, it was like you take a roadkill snake, or maybe at one point
stomach too, right?
you pump the stomach, which is not the easiest thing in the world to do. But you're literally just digging through stuff under a microscope, and so you're looking at animal fur. You need a pretty good mammologist to identify bones and bone fragments and stuff like that. But now we have this awesome genetic stuff we can do, which is there's something called DNA barcoding, where they have these systems where all this stuff has been barcoded. So they've got like squirrel fur, squirrel DNA, all this stuff. They know what a chestnut looks like, and all these different things. So it's all in a system, and they can literally take either fecal samples that we can provide them or guts samples, and they can put all this sludge that I would never be able to identify. Or if I were going to do it like DNA by DNA, I'd have to test it for a million different things. But they can put it all into a system, and they can pull out those barcodes with the genetics. So we're doing some studies like that. I've got some stuff sent off to the lab now. But I really think, the common perception around pine snakes is that they eat small mammals. That's what they eat. Primarily, that's their diet. I've noticed some things studying them and trapping them that are kind of interesting. So we've sent off some specimens, which in our case, a lot of the gut samples that we get so that we don't have to pump stomachs of our study animals because they're not easy to come by. A lot of people that are running traps for them, they may catch 1 or 2 individuals a year. And anybody that's ever road cruise for them, they're not super easy to find. And then hiking one up, you better go buy a lottery ticket if you hike one up because you're lucky. I've heard random off stories of people flipping them under boards before, but that's also like the luckiest thing in the world. But with guts studies, so, other than doing a lot of times when you're getting an animal, you either have to pump a stomach, which you don't really want to do if you're going to study an animal, or you have to take roadkill. So I don't know if I've found a couple roadkill pines, but they're not super easy to come by. So a lot of my gut stuff has come from roadkill that we've gotten out of some of our study areas. But I really, I think maybe they have a more especially in areas where they're put under a lot of stress. I think maybe they have a more complex diet than what we may even think. Because you think about Pitiophis, which is the genus that they come out of. You've got gopher snakes and bull snakes. They eat just about anything they come across.
Yeah, opportunistic feeders, what I would think.
So and I had one experience with one of our male pine snakes, which a lot of people that trap pine snakes, you don't catch very many of them. They're just not easy to find. But we have this one male. His name is George, and he's massive. But when you run drift fence system, which is like a silt fence put in, and it's got attached box traps with funnels in them that'll catch the snakes, and they have to be checked every single day. And so we run a lot of those. It's a pretty common way to catch pine snakes if you're going to do research on them. And so we run those, and with running those in data, people have found that like indigos, coach whips, and racers, which are snake eaters, Ophiophagous, they will run your traps because your traps smell like snakes because you're trying to catch snakes, so you catch a lot of snakes. So these snake-eating snakes will run your traps. And so we have this one trap where we were doing our trapping system. We had this big male, and I trapped him like 5 times. And I was like, I know he's smart enough. He knows my trap system because I've tracked him around it before, and I know that he's moving around it. So I'm like, either he's got a girl on his mind and he's just not thinking straight. But every time I find him in this trap, he's just sitting there fat and happy. And I'm like, his belly. Because I wonder if he's eating frogs, toads, or snakes, which is like our most common thing that we catch. I'm like, what is he eating? Why does he want to be in my trap?
That's free food, baby.
Huh?
I said, that's free food. Come on now.
He just like he was fat and happy. And I was like, I wonder if he's in there eating stuff. Because that's what those racers do. And we've even had racers that, like, every once in a while you'll aggravate when you're picking it up and it'll regurgitate something for you. Just be full of frogs or hognose get in there. We had a hognose in there one day and it looked like a balloon. It had eaten like 22 toads. I was like, I think it may die. But it was just blown up massive. I mean, it didn't even want to move. It looked like somebody like after a Thanksgiving meal just like laid over on a couch.
Jeez.
But that's what some of these animals do. And this pine snake, we just kept catching him. And I was like, I wonder if he's figured out, like, hey, there's food in here. It's like a free buffet. I'll get in there. Like, you don't have to worry about me. I'll just get in the trap.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think they could have a really complex diet.
He was like, man, I'm gonna go eat my fill, and these big hairless monkeys are gonna take me out, and I'm gonna come back and do it again.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm gonna do it again.
But I run some experiments. I keep a captive pine snake. That is one of the things that I do have right now. I've got a young one that a friend of mine gave me. That was captive bred, and I want to see like what will they eat. If you offer, he's a retired state herpetologist from Arizona, Randy Babb. But he's like, go for snakes. They'll eat frogs. They'll eat snakes. I mean, he's like, see what you can get yours to eat. Like, try to feed it a snake. See if it'll eat it. Try to feed it a frog. What will it eat? Will it eat a hot dog? I mean, it might. Is it like fish? I mean, it might. I don't know. And that's one thing that we see a lot with like this is the population that I work with. Like they don't like turtles. They don't have annuli. So you can't really, unless you've known them since they were a baby, you don't know how old they are. They seem to be functioning adults. I mean, they're breeding, they're producing young. But how old are they actually? Because they're not very big. They're small. And so it makes me wonder, like, we know that the small mammal populations in the area where we're doing research right now, like, not the greatest, just from forest management practices and stuff. So, and overhunting. So we just wonder, like, I'm curious, like, what are they eating? Why are they so small? Is it leaner things? Are they eating frogs and other reptiles? So hopefully we get some data back from that. That'll be kind of cool. But I don't know.
Yeah.
We're interested. I mean, I think they could have a very broad diet. I mean, all their cousins do in the gym. So
that's kind of why I was curious, because in the captive approach, I keep several Pituophis here, and a couple pines. I've got albinos and some normal southerns. But you have some people on the side of just give them massive meals. I knew this. I heard on a podcast, I don't even remember her name, but I heard on a podcast once that this lady would literally get roadkill squirrels and feed them to her bull snakes and pine snakes every week. It was either that or every week it was a roadkill squirrel or a large rat. And I'm like, that's massive. But then you have some people more on the fence of like, well, they invade burrows a lot and they'll just go in there and eat up every single little baby they can find. So you have some people on the line of thinking that more like several
small meals.
Several small items at once, and you have some people on the like give them a large rat, and call it that, So I was curious if any field studies showed, which one was more common for them, but kind of sounds like it doesn't matter. Like whatever they come across.
I will say this, I obviously if you're equating like field herping into like captive keeping it, you compare. You guys probably have too. I've come across big rattlesnakes with a lump. I grew up in Alabama where it's the land of the gray rat snake. So you come across a gray rat snake, it'll have a massive lump in it where it's
Mhm.
eating a squirrel or something. I have never. I mean, I've probably seen 50 wild pine snakes. I have never seen a pine snake with a massive lump. It's almost like when I think about pine snakes, we talked about how much they move, and they're like, sometimes they're not moving a whole lot, but sometimes they are. I almost think about like a marathon runner with gels, the way that they're just constantly having to eat or like, consume some kind of calorie. Just seems like they just seem to move and eat and move and eat and just almost like, I don't know. With mine, I do like smaller meals really because it seems like they eat pretty frequently, and you'd almost have to keep that kind of body mass on, moving the way that they do. And so
Right.
I tend to feed mine. I think it seems like you can keep them alive. I know people that have fed big meals once a week or whatever, but I tend to feed mine a smaller meal, pretty regularly. Just
Yeah.
they grow fast. It's almost like you can't overfeed, but I'm sure you can. That's not like,
Yeah.
but they love to eat, and so
If you can afford to overfeed a pine snake, you need more pine snakes.
you're like a
Yeah.
9 quarter and grow it up huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same boat, like my rat snakes, because I'm a rat snake nerd. All my rat snakes, I know they'll take a big meal. I don't worry about them. But with the Pituophis, I try to keep it not small, but like on the biggest thing I feed them is like a medium rat. And then, sometimes they'll get a small rat or 2 jumbo mice, something like that, But even then, like, I don't, some people are on like every 7 days on the dot. I'm like, I just, especially when they're adults, I'm like, I think you can overfeed them. They're going to eat whenever you give them the opportunity, but there is a line, and I'm more like every 10 days or so. Basically whenever I think about it, I feed them, and they hold weight, really well, in my opinion. But I don't know. What do I know?
The way
Yeah.
you talk about how they seem like they're more of a keep eating and keep moving type, that correlates a lot to like the Barons racers. That's kind of like how they're just navigate a bunch of small meals, constantly moving, eating, opportunistic, even if they might not eat one giant meal, but they'll eat 10 little lizards in a day to fill up for that and stay on the move. And it's like their venom is more built for digestion and like breaking the prey down fast so that they're not slowed down. And it kind of seems like instead of the pine snake wanting to eat that giant meal and be slowed down so it can't escape or bust down that little burrow that's just as big as it. Because that was one thing I totally forgot to bring up when you were talking about like how they could hide so good. But I've heard a lot of people talk about how a pine snake will just be, like you're saying, on the surface and you won't think there's a burrow or anywhere for it to go, and there's a little hole literally just as round as the snake, and it figures out a way to go through it. So it almost makes you think like it probably doesn't want to slow itself down or make its ability to disappear, that less, easy on itself. So just
Yeah.
cool thoughts to think about.
Yeah, that is definitely something to think about. Do they not want to eat massive items? So, whether they can get in or even out of a hole if they need to.
I feel like even just the way that they eat, tells you like these guys are nest raiders. They love to
Yeah.
pick off nest and eat multiple small items. They pin against the wall. I mean, they're made to just go in there, overpower, start bulldozing through it. Anyone that tries to escape, they're just going to press them against that burrow wall and pin them until they can scarf them down.
If you've ever fed a pine snake, I keep a lot of mine in racks. But mine, it's so funny because they'll actually come out to get their food, and then every time I try to get them back in, they're pushing against me, and like no matter anything that touches them, they just shove against it. And I'm like, that's that instinct of like anything that they feel, they're just gonna kill that fucker right there, like,
It's dude, the Barons will do that too, and it almost makes me wonder if like they do that as like a eating defense, or if they will also do the same thing of like the raiding of like taking multiple prey items at a time and like have something coiled up and be taking down another thing, or if it's just like I'm on the move, I'm vulnerable right now. If you touch me, I'm gonna kill you anyway. Because my bigger females and my bigger subadults, they'll do that same thing. It's like if anything touches them while they're eating, they're freaking almost like kicking you with their body, and it's it's pretty forceful. So it makes you wonder if it's meant to kill or just to defend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, what about brumation? You know, like what time of year are you seeing them go down? How long are they down? You know, stuff like that.
So this will be kind of interesting. This will be my first through the research projects that I've worked with. A lot of times, you know, if you're working with a graduate student or something, everybody goes back to school during the winter. So I haven't actually got to track one through the winter. But this season will be my first. We have 5 that we're tracking right now, and so I've really been monitoring a lot. You know, when do we? They've been anchored in their same position for a long time, and they're not on the surface very much. Here in the last couple months, we haven't hardly seen any on the surface at all. Tracking routinely twice a week at least, and so I'm really interested to see, you know, do they move? What are they doing here? And then we assume they're going to stay in that one spot for the winter. They could move. You know, we've got a lot of data from tracking eastern diamondback rattlesnakes, and they tend to stomp hop. So they'll come up on a warm day and bask, almost like some species will do in the apron of a gopher tortoise burrow. And then they'll end up in another stump. And it's like, well, did that stump flood out? Like, why did they choose to move somewhere else? Did some kind of mammal move in that they didn't like or something? So we're really interested to figure that out. But I'm almost under the assumption that I think they're going to stay in that one burrow system, because I think they're very selective with the burrow systems as well.
Now, Maddie, I do have a question for you.
Go ahead.
So, like the bull snakes and some of the more westernly and northern Pituophis, do you also think that southern pines and northern pines are liable to use communal hibernaculums?
So with the data, if you looking at academic data, so you have we don't really know. But I have no clue. That's sometimes no answer is an answer. I don't know.
Yeah.
But in the New Jersey Pond Barrens, so Bob Zappalordi did a lot of work for a long time with Joanna Berger, and they did some stuff in North Carolina. They documented communal nesting. So he would go in and they would track an animal to a burrow, and then in the middle of the winter they'd excavate it and pull it up and everything that was in there. So communally with other pine snakes, and then communally, were you asking with other
pine snakes?
So in the pine barrens, we know everywhere they'll community like other, because they're almost like a specialist in their habitat. So other species will come in and they're like, oh, this is a nice little burrow you got here. I don't think I'll use it for the winter. But with in the New Jersey Pine Barrens, they documented, and then I think into the edge of North Carolina as well, multiple pine snake species breeding or using the same nesting chambers. So multiple females would do the same nesting chamber, and then also overwintering together and staying in that one burrow for the winter. There's some data out of Tennessee where they documented that it was just one snake, but using that one burrow system, but I think it also has to do with your population size and health. Because I've gotten to work with a very, very, very unhealthy population of pine snakes and then a more healthy population here. And it'd probably be easy to see one adult in a burrow if you don't have that many adults in the area.
Right.
Whereas if you have a more populated area, they're, I would see that they're also in the way that they're opportunistic with feeding. Why would you go activate your own burrow system when like somebody's already done it?
Right.
But I don't know exactly what the specifications of the population was. They're in Tennessee where that was documented. But I could see them communally nesting and communally overwintering. So we'll see. I mean, we have 5 over an area, all in what you'd call like the same cohort. They could all even be a little bit related to each other. So we'll be interested to see if they use the same burrow system over the winter. But
it sounds like we're gonna have to do another episode come springtime and see where you got on that.
We're gonna try some camera systems, because I'm interested. Do other pine snakes use these burrows? And then I'm also interested what else uses these burrows.
Yeah, what other species might use it? Yeah, for sure. What about their breeding season? Because I obviously I've got snakes in boxes. We're not going to make anything more of it. But I bred 2 species of Pituophis this year. I did a Texas locality of gopher snake, and I bred my albino pines. Unfortunately, the albino pines, although they bred, the eggs were infertile, so I didn't get any babies out of them. Mm-hmm. But the pine snakes went much, much later than the gopher snakes. Like I didn't get my female pine didn't lay her eggs almost until the gopher snakes had hatched. So it was more like mid-summer, late summer versus like early summer, late spring for the gopher for the gopher snakes.
Yeah, so that's right on the money for pine snakes, and I actually have I've never bred pine snakes myself, but I have we work with a retired herpetologist every day. He's 80 years old, and he kept black pines for a long time and a bunch of different stuff. His name's Ab Abercrombie. He's a cool guy.
Mhm.
But his were like clockwork, and that's the same way it is with any. I've gotten to track a few gravid females, and you can come back in. But they lay in the middle of the summer.
Okay.
Breed, and it's like very like religious, like a certain time that each snake, like Ab kept these black pines for like 15 years, and like they would breed within the same week and lay within the same week the whole time.
Wow.
I believe those black pines are the same one that Michael, who was on, was it Snakes and Stogies? They did he did the Pitch You Office episode.
I don't know.
Or was that Klubert and Kluberoid? It might have been. Oh,
No.
anyway,
Was it recent?
yeah, it was a recent one.
Oh yeah. He was talking about Louisiana pines and black pines.
Yeah, those black.
Yeah, that was Kluber and Kluber.
With the same pair that she's talking about.
Okay.
They would lay to the exact, and so middle of the summer they start breeding. I mean, their breeding movement starts as soon as it starts to warm up in the spring. But then they breed. I don't know exactly how long they're gravid for, their gestation before they lay the eggs. I do know they're pretty selective with where they lay their eggs, though. There's a method to the madness. We don't really understand why they put them where they put them, but they do put them underground. And then they hatch out in late summer, and they're ready to go.
Yeah, I just thought it was weird because I paired mine at the same time I paired the gopher snakes.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, because I had that thought, I think the previous year I attempted, I put them together previous year, but when nothing was happening, I just pulled the male. This year, I was like, no, I'm going to keep putting them together until they give me freaking eggs. Like, unless they have to go down for brumation, like, I'm just going to keep putting them together. And that was it. I just kept pairing them, and I would take the male out to feed them. And I had them together, 5 days a week, essentially. And they just went way later than the gopher snakes did. It was just, I don't know, it was odd. So this year, I'm like, well, do I just not pair them up until several weeks after I pull them from brumation, or do I just do what I did last year? And I mean, I'm probably not going to pair them up this year. The female was egg bound, and she took a while to bounce back from that, so I don't think I'll be pairing them up again. But next time that I do, I'm like, do I wait several weeks after I pull them from brumation, or I just do what I did last time and keep them going?
Yeah. I have a question for you. So when you put them in right after brumation, did the male seem interested? Was he courting the female? So he was interested if maybe she just hasn't ovulated yet?
Yeah, I don't know. That's why, everybody I spoke to was like, dude, pull them out of brumation, give them a small meal, and do it like next day. It's very like quick process. And the male, and they even both seem interested. Like they would touch each other and they would start doing the little bounce thing that they do. And, a lot of tail wagging. They both would wag their tails like crazy. I would hear them in there smacking the side of the tub, and they kept doing that bounce thing. But then that would happen for like, a couple hours, and then they'd be on the opposite ends of the enclosure. So I'm like,
do you think it was like a quick copulation here and there that you might have just missed in that time span of them bumping and grinding to the, hey, I'm on the other side, leave me alone?
Well, it's definitely possible, but they did that as soon as I put them together every single time. Every time I put them together, they would start doing the whole dance and the tail wagging, and then they would stop. Now, granted, I am of the opinion that put snakes together, make sure they're not going to kill each other, and then leave. Like, I don't sit there and watch and, wait for something to happen, because, if you sitting there staring at them, I wouldn't. So it's just one of those things. Like, yeah, I for sure missed it, but I don't know. It was just weird that the gopher snakes were almost immediate, like bang, bang. Like I had the gopher snakes and my gray rats drop eggs on the same day, literally the same exact day. So it was like, they obviously went right away, and the pines were months later, so it was just weird.
I will give you this. Like, this is a field observation that I've had, and we got this year. This hasn't been presented yet, but we got to experience like an entire breeding season. Like we had 2 individuals, a male and a female. We caught them copulating and their breeding cycle, and then the female laid eggs for us, and we got to intercept the young. So it was like from beginning to end, we got to see all of it in a season, which is insane. But the male and the female, because we had transmitters in both, so we knew that they were there. They went to this hole where the female was there first. The male showed up to this burrow. He stayed in that burrow for like 3 weeks. And when we would come during the day, he would sit outside that burrow and he'd wait on her. She'd be underground. And then sometimes we would come up and they'd be together and they'd be locked up. And then sometimes we'd come up and they'd both be under the ground in the same burrow. But he stayed with that girl. Now, there could have been multiple girls under there, but I mean, we know for sure that male, that female, they stayed in that same area for like 3 weeks. And so I wonder, like, is it a continuous, like, was there multiple breeding events that happened here?
Right.
Like a super long courtship?
Yeah,
like,
that's what I was wondering. Is it more of a courtship situation?
Yeah.
You know? Huh.
He seems to have multiple girls because he'll move. Like, once he was finished with that girl, he booked it to another area.
Man's getting after it.
It's just around town. But, like, it's just, I don't really know. I mean, obviously, like, we can't be underground with them and see everything.
Right.
One of my bosses always makes it. He's like, I wish we could just strap a GoPro to it. And I'm like, yeah,
right.
Little tiny pinhole GoPros.
You guys need the stethoscopes or whatever. The little
the burrow scopes. Oh, with the pine snakes, we were talking about these intricate burrows. Sometimes you get like a pine snake burrow. I've never excavated one, but like it will start and then immediately go like 90 degrees that way. So you can't even run a burrow scope because they're kind of rigid. You can hardly even get one to go down in there. Now we have had success with like these cheap like Amazon sewer scopes, like endoscopes or whatever. Like if you want to like, I don't know, do your own endoscope thing at home. I don't know why you can even buy those online, but
I think you should need a medical license to do that. But you know, that's just me.
All right. Hear me out.
It's not hustle. This is how he makes money at night.
Yeah, right. Hear me out though.
After hours proctologist, guys.
What you need to do is get the smallest RC car you can find. Strap a camera to that sucker and just drive it down there. And see
attach a string to it.
That's right. It's just
put it. No dumb ideas. This will be written. I'm jotting this down.
I'm telling you, dude. Like, just get a little RC car in there that can like do like where like it can turn in a circle. You know, just back that sucker
like
out.
Little hex bugs,
a nano bug,
like a nano bug. Like if you had like a way to control a nano bug size, like.
Yeah.
RC.
I mean, realistically,
like,
it's only got to be small enough. It's only got to be small enough to fit in the hole.
Yeah.
You know, so you could probably get away with something, relative. If it can fit, if a big old pine snake can fit down there, you can find an RC car that'll fit down there. All right.
I like it.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
Pass straight to it in case it gets stuck, pull it out, start again.
That's right.
There you go.
You gotta do. You don't have to use string. Use a fishing line. Make it easier. Tie a fishing line. Do it. If batteries die or get stuck, just pull that sucker back up.
Leave it attached to the pole. Fucking.
You sent it to smell like mice, so when it comes up on the pit, you just reel the pit out.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you go pit fishing.
Fishing for pine snakes. Yeah. Hey, it could work. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
right.
It could work.
That'd be the other thing if it ends up going down to where you can't back the RC car out. That's where the fishing line comes in handy.
Yeah, there you go.
Pull that sucker out, man. Look, I'm just here for the ideas. Okay, that's yeah. But let's see, what else did we have here? So what about hatchlings? Like, when are they? I know you said they lay late. Looks like late summer. Are they hatching out? Early fall, essentially.
Early fall. Yeah, I'm interested in what is your experience with what is your gestation like? How long?
Well, I haven't hatched pine snakes yet, unfortunately. I hatched the gopher snakes, and those I incubated at 78 degrees, and they hatched out around days, I want to say about 65. About 65 days. So those were for the gopher snakes. But I know pine snakes, are a lot bigger babies. My gopher snakes aren't small. They were not small babies by any stretch.
The pine snake babies aren't much bigger than your gopher snake babies.
Okay.
Comparatively, any that I've ever seen, or even captives, they're compared to yours, they're a little bit bigger, but it's not drastically bigger.
And I will preface the gopher snakes I'm referring to are not the small San Diegos. I've got Brewster County, Texas, Sonoran gophers, and my adults are 6 feet long. They're big snakes, you know. That was the other thing that I was surprised about when you said, you know, 8 to 15, 20 eggs. I was under the impression, at least in captivity, pine snakes had much smaller clutches, but just massive eggs. Like everybody I had spoken to was like, dude, expect 4, 5 eggs max. My girl gave me 8. They were all infertile, you know, but everybody was saying how that was a massive clutch for a pine. But,
well, so I think it all is size dependent. There's some literature that says you could get like 20 or 24, but I don't know how that's even going to work. I know with the female that we had, so we were able to intercept like 5 hatchlings from the nest site. Of course, I don't think we called it a single one, but I have a radiograph of her because we didn't really realize that she was gravid at the time. But I was like, I think she's gravid. But her transmitter needed some adjustments done to it, so I took her to a veterinarian and we looked at under I don't know if it's a CAT scan. I don't know exactly what we did, but anyways, it looked like maybe an X-ray.
MRI.
Maybe it was an MRI.
Yeah.
But she did it. She had like, I mean, it was hard because it's really hard to MRI a snake because they have to be really still, and so they're like very blurry. But I think she had, and this is not a very big female at all, maybe 4 and a quarter, 4.5. I think she had 8, maybe 9 eggs in her. I don't know if they all look fertile, but they're huge. I mean, really big,
giant eggs.
Yeah, massive.
Oh my god,
that's right, Tino.
Pituophis, greater than all.
That's right.
It is kind of, I mean, like the babies are big though, but really when you look at how big the egg is, like, I mean, the babies are big, but like that's
yeah.
Like,
yeah, they're I couldn't believe it, man.
They're like baked potatoes, bro.
Yeah, they're massive. Because my girl was egg bound, and as she started, you know, dropping the eggs, you know, obviously she lost a little bit of weight, and you know, when she was egg bound with those last 2 eggs, dude, I felt terrible. I was about to see about getting them surgically removed or something because she looked so bad because those eggs were massive and they were right at the cloaca. And the only reason I didn't take her to the vet is because I've heard a lot of people when their snake's egg bound, if they get them removed, a lot of times that results in a bad ending for the girl. And she's one of my favorite snakes. I was like, I really don't want to lose her. So kind of just let her do her thing. And she held on to those. She held on to the last 2, I think, for nearly 3 weeks, and she finally dropped them both within like 3 or 4 days of each other. But now she's back on food, gaining weight, and so she's good.
Well, another thing to think about too is if you think about the size of the babies and the size of the eggs, and earlier we were talking about how much they eat, how they're always active, always eating. That goes into the always eating part, right? So you're gonna put that much energy into developing that large of follicles to develop that large of eggs with that big of babies. That's going to take a lot of energy. So it would make sense that they would be eating as much as they do when they're expending as much energy as they are on those babies.
And that might be the move for next time. Once I know she's gravid, just feed the hell out of her.
Power feed. Yeah.
Maybe not massive items, but like as many small items as I can get down her. Maybe that'll help. Because I wondered why, you know, originally I thought it was because the clutch was, you know, quote unquote big, but apparently it's not. So I'm wondering, I thought that was why, but you know, maybe I just wasn't feeding her enough. That's wild. But then, you know, I had the gopher snake, you know, she's big. I wasn't expecting the eggs to be big. Those were massive eggs, and she dropped 15.
Goodness.
Like giant eggs, dude. Like they were almost as big as the pine snake eggs. Not quite as big, but they were, you know, twice the size of a golf ball. You know, like they're big eggs, dude.
And to have double the number, dude, that's freaking nuts.
Yeah, dude. She dropped 15. Not all of them went the distance. They all looked good originally. They all had veins because I candled them. But several of them went bad, and a couple babies died in the egg. And I ended up with 8 total, unfortunately, as far as babies went. But yeah, these are also both first-time breeders. like that. This was our first season going, so I'm sure that played a role in it as well. But yeah, Pitchovis, man, I have such a love-hate relationship with keeping them. My God,
Yeah,
they eat me out of house and home.
I like to eat.
Yeah, I am curious now that I want to start offering them like frog legs or something. See if they'll
Hey,
take them.
I
Do the
feed
experiments for us.
I feed mine chicks.
Oh yeah, mine will eat chicks. So that's the other thing. You want to talk about how easy they are to like feed and they'll eat anything. That my female was a nightmare for a while. My albino female. She basically got sent to me because she would only eat live.
Did you get her from Mike?
No. I got her from Chris Paint Shop. My albino female.
Mikes are evil.
Yeah, they're evil. No, these were really nice. The male would eat anything, but the female would only eat live, and Chris was done with it, so he sent them to me. And I got her to eat a frozen thawed mouse the first time I fed her, and I was like, okay, word, like done.
So what I've heard is work before getting them to eat is offering like a lot of rat pinkies, like hairless.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming it's because like we said earlier, they're nest raiders, right?
Right.
And so it would make sense if you're offering a bunch of pinkies simulated like a nest, like you put them in there in a cup,
Sure.
right? I've heard it works great.
Yeah. Well, that's why this was weird. So when I offered her the mouse the first time, she ate it, with a little hesitation, but she ate it. Then after that, she wouldn't touch a frozen thawed mouse. And I was like, well, what the hell? So I need to get food in her. So I offered her a live mouse, destroyed it like instantly. And I was like, okay. And then she wouldn't eat a frozen thawed. I was like, well, I don't want to keep feeding her live. And I was like, I wonder if she'll eat a rat. So I took a small rat and I waved it in front of her face. She backed up for a second and she went, oh shit, you just saw something click, and she destroyed it like right there, like it was nothing. And then she only eats rats. She will not eat mice. I've had her eat chicks, but when I had her on chicks, then she wouldn't go back on the rats. She was like, no, I'm only going to eat chicks. And I was like, no, we're not doing this. So went back to rats. And
I was gonna say give her some eggs, but I wouldn't do that. If she may never eat anything but eggs again.
yeah, I'm saying, man, she's weird. Once she gets on something, she don't want nothing else. And that was
You
the
know,
other
now
thing
that
with the male.
that you say that about the egg thing, I follow like all the local Facebook groups. I've multiple times had people post in the ID groups of the pine snakes in chicken coops and stuff like that, just full of eggs sitting there in the chicken coop, and people are like, "Is this a corn snake?" No, buddy, it's not actually.
Mutton egg.
Oh, they love them. Like, just if you can get farm fresh, they probably need a grocery store egg. I don't know, but I know a farm fresh egg. If you can I don't even like. They do it best if it's unwashed, but you can probably wash one. But they love eggs.
Dang.
Probably a lot of eggs in the wild. I don't know. I've heard a story. This was kind of a crazy story, and I don't know. It came from a friend of mine, so I kind of believe it, but I don't. But I have a story of yeah, if you do this, friend. But so someone was apparently tracking a pine snake one day, and they kept getting this random beep, and they're like, "Where? Like it's coming from upward," and so they like fly a drone up or climb up or something, and there's a pine snake coiled in a red cockaded woodpecker hole. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Oh no.
And so I was like, I mean, they eat bird. Like, I mean, obviously, like they probably don't climb very much, but I mean, I know a pine snake can climb. Like, that's kind of wild. But like, were they up there nest? I was like, were there woodpeckers in there or something? I think he said it was a nest, so there was like there were babies, and so it was eating the woodpeckers. And I was like, that's wild. Like,
but of all the woodpeckers to eat, you got to go for the RCPs, man. Like, come on, man. That's pick a different woodpecker, dude.
Different woodpecker. Yeah, I don't. But I mean, who knows? I mean, I know they love eggs. But.
Yeah, I might have to do that. I am weird though about eggs. I don't know why. Like, I feel weird about eggs, but I should probably try that. But that, like you said, though, once she gets on something that she likes, boy, she won't eat nothing else. So
they never. That's what I've always heard with Gila monsters. Like they're like. People always tell me never feed them eggs. Like,
yeah, because they won't eat nothing else.
They won't eat anything ever again.
Well, carpets can be like that too. If you feed them, any type of fowl once, they're like, "Fuck your rodents."
Dude, I've got my male adult poplin that's evil. Only eats chicks. any kind of rodent whatsoever. He's like, I only want chickens.
That's crazy, man.
I got a female poplin carpet like that. She doesn't want nothing but birds.
Yep.
I might have to try and source some button quail eggs. I've got some of these. I got 4 of these baby gopher snakes that won't eat nothing. They won't eat.
You know when he wants to
literally half the clutch ate first time, the other half still hasn't eaten.
I tell you one thing that they will eat. It's not gonna be a pain in the butt, but they will eat a lizard.
Yeah.
That's the worst route to go. You might consent it with lizard soup or something.
I might try that.
You get you some race runners or some fence lizards, man.
Also, they'll eat frogs. You could try.
I've thought about a piece of a frog leg, like cut off a chunk of frog meat.
It might do it.
Have you tried like the whole can of salmon juice, can of tuna juice trick? I mean,
that worked wonders for a hognose that I had. Guy told me it was eating frozen thawed just fine. I got brought it home and she didn't want nothing to do with it. And then my other buddy told me, he's like, dude, go to the store, get a can of pink salmon. He said, pour out that juice and coat the pinky in it. I said, I can almost guarantee you it'll work. I was like, okay. So I tried that. Boy, I swear I let that thing soak in the salmon juice for 20 minutes or so. Pulled it out and she immediately went on defense because I was in her. And then she smelled that juice. She went, oh, hell yeah. I came gaping out at it. So I might try it. Yeah, I don't know. Might have to give that.
I mean, Maddie got a speckled rattlesnake to eat a pinky by scenting with the rosy reds. When do you think a speck's ever going to come across a rosy red?
I wonder if it's just like almost the imitation of something else. Like it smells like something that they would see naturally. It's not exactly like the rosy red, but the rosy red just so happens to smell like an amphibian that they would see. So it triggers something maybe. I don't know.
Like there's some sort of something that it's something about like that's what people say. Like I've heard with the hog nose is like put them in a paper bag or something overnight. And I'm like, what does the bag do to the? Does it do something like ferment the smell where like when it gets to a certain point it makes it? I mean, like what is the? I don't know, but I have the same thought process. I'm like, what's stimulating? What is triggering this?
Hey, it's weird because I tried everything. I threw the kitchen sink at my babies this year, and I was bitching and complaining to Jake about when's the give up point. Like, when do you just stop trying? Because like I'm sick of assist feeding and force feeding a couple of these babies. And he was like, "What dog did you try?" And he's like, "All right." He's like, either take them on a trip around the block, or he's like, put them in a freaking a different enclosure, just slap full of freaking fake decor or whatever. And I was like, those are the 2 things I haven't tried. So I freaking I finally got the other ones to eat. I had one holdout, slapped it in a critter keeper. I literally just took a critter keeper, wedged a bunch of fake greenery in it, and put a water bowl at the bottom. Put the snake in there, gave it 45 minutes. I offered it a pinky on tongs. It acted like it's been doing it from day one. Fucking came right up, snatched it right off. I sent a video to Jake. I was like, well, naming this one after you because all it needed was 45 minutes, bud. But dude, 4.5 months. And that's the first time it took a meal on its own.
It had performance anxiety, man. It was shy.
Yeah, very much so.
That's funny. Jeez, yeah, the things I've heard, like, the whole paper bag thing that you brought up, I've heard a lot of people like they would stick. A lot of people did it with like ball pythons, because ball pythons are notorious for being terrible about feeding, babies. But I've heard a lot of people say, put them in a paper bag, put them in the back of your car, and drive around for an hour. And I'm like, really? Like, yeah, but I also can't tell you how many times, it hasn't happened to me, maybe once, but somebody would send somebody like, hey, this, happened to Justin. Somebody sent Justin a baby carpet python. I was like, dude, it's not eating. Just take it. It shipped it to Justin. Justin offered it a fuzzy that day and it took right away. It's like I don't know what it is, if it's just like the change of environment or the process of moving around gets them going for some reason, but it works. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start shipping snakes to myself. I'm gonna send them. They'll just go to Memphis and back.
All right, buddy, you're going on a plane ride. They're not even gonna know what to do with you. They're gonna take you on a round trip.
That's right.
See you in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. All right. Well, any other pine snake questions we have, guys, for Maddie?
I
Anything
just
else
want
we
to
think of?
know.
So, oh no, go ahead, Sky.
No, yeah, you go. You go.
So as far as pine snakes go, Maddie, what do you think is one of the coolest observations you've seen just in general? Like something that you saw with the pine snake's habits that you wouldn't have thought would be typical, or something just like the red cockaded woodpecker event, like something wild that you saw that made you go, huh, these snake there's something more to these snakes than what meets the eye.
I think one thing is just being around them when, especially because you know you get a captive snake that's been raised in captivity and they just kind of become used to captivity. And I mean, captive pine snakes are smart, no doubt. But sometimes you know maybe they don't have as much stimuli. There's not something trying to eat them constantly. But when you really get face to face with a adult wild pine snake and you realize how intelligent that animal is, I mean, it is constantly looking around, it is constantly assessing. You're like, this thing is smart. Like this thing knows what it's doing. I think that's really cool. But other than that, I mean, just the whole breeding thing, like getting to, I wasn't there, but we had volunteers that got to watch them locked up copulating, and that was really cool. But then also to see a freshly hatched pine snake, like that was super wild to get to document that, like the nest and then coming out. We literally got to see some that was like the first time they'd come out of the ground. But it was just super interesting. And another thing with the nest is they had shed when they came out the first time. So
Really?
like they stayed underground long enough to shed. So they were underground for a week. But I don't know. I think the sheer intelligence of them. I haven't had too many weird stories, but this is a friend of mine gave me permission to share this story. This is a weird one. But so pine snakes, I said they're like super smart. They learn, you know, they can feel the vibrations on the ground. They'll disappear. So this was several years ago before I was working with the organization I'm working with now, but a guy that I work with, they had a pine snake that they had found one off walking a burn and put a transmitter in it and had been out. So of course, when you're working with any technology, something can break, and they'd named this pine snake and they tracked it for several months. Well, they lost signal one day and they pretty much concluded that the transmitter was dead, like the battery had malfunctioned or something. So they had done these like intricate searches where you like start in one spot and you like move out. They'd like had multiple people move over. They might have even tried a drone at one point. And so they moved all over this area, couldn't find them, and they kept doing this. I mean, you just keep going for months because you're like, maybe one day it'll show back up. And so he was out one day just walking the area, and you know, said they're like super secretive, like you can hardly even find one with a transmitter in it. They're usually underground. He stumbles, he's paying attention. He stumbles over something, and it's the snake with that transmitter inside of it, but it had a pit tag in it. So when they took it, and he looks at him, and he's like, "Wait, I'm looking for you." He like picks him up, takes him back to the truck, and he's like, "I just got to make sure I'm not like tripping out right now." He scans him, and sure enough, that's Dwight. Like there he is, and he's like,
Freaking Dwight.
he went and bought a lottery ticket with like the GPS coordinates on it.
That's freaking awesome.
Like we literally caught a pine snake, which is hard enough. Then we lost the pine snake, and I tripped over him with a dead transmitter inside of him. Like he just happened to be hanging out right here, and I tripped over him. And he's like, I will never do anything like that ever again. That was the coolest thing in the world.
That's too many. That's too many coincidences coming back and forth at once. That's freaking awesome.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask though, do you think since the pine snakes are such a like highly adapted to their environment, are they more a case of obviously we know habitat loss and you know development is hurting their numbers and just among a bunch of other things, but are they more of a we just don't see them and they do have good numbers, or do we think that their numbers are as low as we think they are, or is it just they're so elusive that we really don't know where their numbers lie?
That's a good question. I think with it, just like any species, you know, you have these people that look for these like cryptid, like Bigfoot. Everybody's like, you know, we're looking for Bigfoot, but nobody's ever found a Bigfoot. Nobody's ever seen a dead Bigfoot, you know. But with you bringing up the story of like in the snake groups, you know, we're in the day and age now with snake ID groups. Like if there's one there, like it's probably going to show up. I mean, there's a few species that fall through the cracks, but I think there are some areas where maybe we think they're not there, where maybe there's a population. But one thing about them is if there's a good, healthy population, one's gonna show up in somebody's yard, one's gonna show up in somebody's chicken coop. Somebody's gonna see one somewhere. There's gonna be a dead one on the road, especially because they're so big. A lot of people don't know what they even look like. Like that's the funniest thing to me is when I would go do like educational programs. You pull out like a 6-foot male pine snake, and you pull it out. Like we have this big snake that lives here, and a kid will be like, "Oh, an indigo," and you pull it out, and they're like, "Whoa, like what is that? Thing's huge." I'm like, "This is a pine snake. Like they live right here," and they're like, "No way, like we've never seen one of those." And I'm like, "Oh,
Right.
But I think it's kind of a teeter-totter. Like in some areas, I think the populations maybe a little bit healthier than what we actually think they are, or where we think there's none. Maybe there is some, and we're just having trouble finding them. But I think if an area has a really strong, healthy population, especially in areas where like indigos are, pine snakes are on the food chain for indigos. So if you go down to an area that's been managed really correctly, and there's a good population of indigos, there's probably a good population of pine snakes, and they're relatively, I guess you could say in a herper sense, common. Because if you're finding more than one pine snake in an area, like they're probably common, healthy. But I don't know. I think it depends on the area and what's going on. But I think if there's a really solid, healthy population, like back pre-settlement days, I think that one would show up somewhere. Especially since they have these massive home ranges and they're so opportunistic. If it's close to people, there's human interaction. If they're there, someone's going to come across one at some point. If they're in mass, good numbers like they should be, I think.
It just makes me also wonder if the pine snake numbers were ever as heavy on the East Coast if they are like gopher snakes are on the West Coast and stuff, because you could run across, tons of gopher snakes in a night, but it's not like that over here on the East Coast. Are the numbers lower, or is the habitat better? Like,
I think that's just because the pine snakes are so habitat specific, such habitat specialists. They need that specific longleaf upland sandy pine habitat, whereas gopher snakes are adapted to live in this broader range of rocky habitat.
Yeah, okay.
They're not as much a habitat specialist as the pine snakes.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's a little bit more broad, because the only Pituophis I've ever found was a bull snake out in South Texas. And I was literally walking across a parking lot to go to a trail, and it was probably 100 degrees out, and this thing was in the middle of the parking lot just getting after it, going across it. And I was like, what the hell is this thing doing here? But it was the coolest thing ever. It was one of the coolest snakes I've ever found.
That's cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you do bring up a good point, though. I mean, with the way they probably were never as common because of the specialism,
right?
That type. But you think about pre-settlement days, like when the land was managing itself, something was always on fire in the southeast. Longleaf was dominant. You had these massive longleaf ponds. Like, were there just pine snakes crawling everywhere? Like, what was?
I mean, there's stories in some historical accounts of diamondbacks on the beaches when they came in. I mean,
dude, I've heard stories about here, like in an area that basically the area I grew up. I've heard people like back in the 70s, 80s, he said, this road right here, I was literally, I was herping with this guy. He goes, this road, I used to ride a bike down this road and catch diamondbacks all day. He said they were everywhere here. He said, but now he said they're extirpated from this area. They're still in the county, but they're not here anymore because of, habitat loss and all this stuff. And I'm like, God damn, dude, like, it's nuts,
sad, man.
Yeah, and talking to I know a lot of surveyors, old guys who've been surveying for a long time. They've seen some freaking snakes. One of my good friends, he was a surveyor, years and years ago, and he's like, dude, I can tell you exactly where to find diamondbacks. I was like, you might be able to tell me where you used to find diamondbacks, but because of your fucking ass surveying all this stuff for all the developments, you don't anymore. So it's it's sad, man.
Yeah,
but such is life.
One something that's really interesting. We were talking about just all these different like life or specializations. Something that's super interesting is like areas where the habitat's been disrupted, but they've moved into something else. Like I've heard stories of in Georgia, North Georgia, where they're tracking pine snakes to try to do some land connectivity stuff, and like they've tracked pine snakes into kudzu. Like what does kudzu
really?
Yeah, what is so it's like one of those situations where like I know a lot of stories of like people are this road used to be the best for this species, And now there's a subdivision there, but they still find that species every once in a while because they've somehow found a way to hang on the outskirts.
Right.
So sometimes that really like highlights something really weird about a species of like, it's a sad story, but it's like, okay, we know that they use this habitat type, but now they've been disrupted and they're using this. What does that tell us about this animal? What are they getting from that? Like, what is the, I have no clue why they concluded they were in kudzu, but they straight up tracked multiple into kudzu patches. I was
That's
like,
crazy.
I can't. I don't know if that's something to do with the way that kudzu like does something to the ground and it was making it. I have no clue, but maybe it had the animals were using it. I don't know, but there's some really weird stuff that comes out of that. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Dang. Well,
Only the strong will prevail, unfortunately. And we're just making it harder and harder on them. Fucking sucks, man.
So, with all that said, support your local places that fight for these things, man. Like ARC, support ARC. You should do that. So, are we good on Pine Snake talk, boys? Everything covered, we think.
You good?
I'm good.
All right.
Well, Maddie, talking, just being a field biologist, what advice would you give to somebody who, anybody who's looking at that path, as a career? What advice would you give them?
I would definitely tell you that, there's a lot of people that want to be field biologists and not a lot of it's not the easiest field to find jobs and it's very competitive. So if it's something that you think you want to do, I mean, you need to assess in yourself, like, is this something that I'm passionate about? Is this something that I want to pursue? Because, unfortunately, I know a lot of people that started down this path. And when they started to realize, like, I'm not going to make the most money doing this. Sometimes it's not the best work-life balance because you're passionate about what you're working with. And a lot of times these species require, you do have to do what they do. So if you're working with a flatwood salamander, for instance, sometimes you're surveying during the day. For some parts of the year, you're probably surveying at night. It's not the easiest thing to do. You have to be pretty flexible. But really just, I think it comes down to passion. I mean, there's some people that this is a job you really have to be passionate about because you're probably not going to make the most money in the world. Some of these positions require a lot of education and you're still not going to get compensated for it a lot. Yeah. So it's just one of those things where you have to look inward and is this something that I am passionate enough about because it's all sacrifices. A lot of people in this field make a lot of sacrifices for what they do. It's sacrifices of their body. It's a very physical field. You have to do a lot of physical labor and things like that. So you're sacrificing your body. You're sacrificing a lot of times, you get free field housing when you're working or something like that. It might not be the best. You may be living with rats and mice or something.
It's usually not the best.
Yeah. I've heard some horror stories. But, it's just there's a lot of sacrifices. So it's really just a passion thing. You have to be super passionate about it. And, it's one of those things where like, if I weigh all these odds, if I do this. And another way when you're in college, so, building relationships with your advisors and people that you're working with, if you're going that route, that's good. Dip your toe in by doing some field projects with your professors and trying to get out in the field as much as possible, volunteer with organizations when you can. But one of the biggest things is when you get out of college. So this is a field where you get your education, but just because you have a bachelor's degree doesn't mean that you're a good field biologist. You have to kind of learn some on the ground skills. So take a field job. A lot of people need seasonal technicians. You can even do this when you're in college over the summer and stuff. People need seasonal technicians. So go take a field job for 6 months or 8 months or, travel around a little bit, do a few different things and kind of get a feel for it. And that may help you decide whether this is for you or whether it's not. But it is kind of a really specific field. It's pretty competitive. So you just really be passionate about it and understand that you're going to have to make some sacrifices. It's probably not going to be the easiest field in the world, but if you're really passionate about it, it could be worth it. It's really fulfilling, but definitely some sacrifices that have to be made for it. And it's not the easiest to find full-time jobs. So a lot of people want to put you on contracts because they just need you for a season. Or working with some species like in the winter, if they're not doing anything, they don't want to pay you. So you have to, it's hard to find those full-time positions. So that's just another thing to think about. It's just, sometimes it's worth it to stick with it. I know a lot of people that have decided to part ways and go somewhere else and do something else with their education. But I don't know. Everybody it's not a linear field either. Like everybody doesn't have the same path. So, some people are academic. Some people work for the state. Some people work for nonprofits. Some people, it all depends on what you're passionate about, what you're interested in doing. But nobody's story is exactly the same. So that's something that's a good thing and a bad thing in some circumstances because there's no blueprint for it. So you just kind of gotta decide if you're up for the challenge, and if you want to do it, then keep plugging away at it. But yeah, it's definitely fulfilling. I don't know. It's worth
Definitely
it.
you get paid in trident layers of self-fulfillment is what it's more like rather than paychecks.
Yeah, and one thing to remember too is a lot of people, they see, even with like the organization I work with, like you get all these beautiful social media posts and all this, and people trapping around with animals in their hands, and you're like, oh, that would be so fun to do every day. But like literally today, I did data entry all day. I've done that for the last like 3 or 4 days because it's kind of cooling down our seasons. So I've been sitting at a computer desk all day entering stuff into an Excel spreadsheet. That's a lot of what our job. So you go out and you get to collect the data. But then you got to enter all this. You got to make graphs. You have to do presentations. You have to talk to people. You've got to be, if you're not really good at talking to people, it's probably not the best field because I have to have relationships with all kind of people, landowners. I mean, when I go to the gas station in town, people are like, hey, I see there's a amphibian and reptile conservancy. I killed a rattlesnake in my yard yesterday. They show you a picture and you're like, that is like, I've only ever seen one of those and it doesn't even have a head. And you're like, what? You're like, this is a super endangered species of snake, but you have to be appreciative and you have to like have this. So it's one of these things where you have to be super passionate about what you're doing, but you also have to be really good at social skills. It's really good. It's all about who you know in this field because it's a small field. So you have to build this massive network. I mean, there's a lot of different things. So definitely, you have to really assess yourself and be like, am I a good fit for this?
Yeah.
But yeah, there are days you get to handle a lot of snakes, but there are a lot of days where you completely get skunked or you're just, we do a lot of wetland restoration. That means, that sounds like a very glorious thing. That means we're going in and we're taking chainsaws and we're cutting trees down and then we buck them into small pieces and then we haul them out. We do this for weeks at a time. And it's great for the gopher frogs and the flatwood salamanders, but, it's a lot of physical labor and it's not always the funnest thing in the world. So it's just understanding it's a big picture thing. Like, am I passionate enough about the big picture that I can do this every day? So I don't know, very multifaceted, probably more than what you wanted, but there's a lot of things.
That's great.
Yeah. It's I don't know. It's an interesting field.
Yeah. No, I can't tell you, man. I had a friend of mine that got his master's degree from Marshall. He was a herpetologist and now he manages a landscape company.
Yeah.
It's like, and he's just like, dude, I just couldn't find work. He's like, I love it. Did it for a long time, and worked at a lot of places around here. Did diamondback studies out here on some of the islands and got out of school and couldn't find a job in the field. It's just, there's a reason why I work for the county as a stormwater inspector, but I have 100 snakes in my house.
Yeah.
I keep my toe in it because I love it, but I didn't do it. So,
yeah.
But
it's
and that's it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. It's just like, like you're saying, you gotta be very passionate about it, and you gotta know a lot of people.
Well, and this is a kind of an interesting, so I came out of college and I had a really great, he's a friend of mine, the herpetologist I was working with. He kind of, I was able to put him as a reference and, his name kind of draws eyes. And so, of course, I got an interview for that job because that student immediately recognized that name and was like, I want his student I want to interview that student.
Yeah.
And so that was a big help. I mean, nothing to anything that I'd done. I mean, my resume absolutely sucked. But I took that job and I got that job and I worked hard and I learned a lot of stuff. When I was at that job, to get the job that I have now, I was actually out in that area where I was working. They have flat muscle, Stenotherus depressus, and I was looking at a body of water that I thought might have had the water, and we had some scientific collection permits that covered that. So legally, I could have, looked for one. And I was walking on the side of a river, and there's a group of people. I was in a marked truck from the state of Tennessee, but I was in Alabama, and I was working by myself that day. I wasn't with the guy that I was working with. He was out of town, and there was like 4 guys coming up from the river. I was walking down, but I was in a marked truck, and we walked past each other, and I had on like a shirt. I looked like a game warden, so people would like get weird about it. They get squirrely when I pulled up. I'm like, you don't have to hide your beer or anything. Like, I don't care. If you're hunting illegally, I don't care. I do not work for the state. This is the state of Tennessee. We're in Alabama. I was like, just read the truck. Like, it's not. I walked down. These guys were like, hey, how are you? I just kept walking, and I just kind of high-hatted them and walked on. And they get up to the truck, and they're like, Tennessee State, and they're like, they called him. They're like, you work for so and so, and I was like, yeah, I work for Dr. So and so. they were like, "Oh, no way!" And so they introduced themselves, and I was like, "That's the flat." When they said their names, I was like, "That's the flat musk turtle guy from Auburn." Like, this is a guy, and so I actually met the guy that hired me from ARC on the side of a river because I just happened to stop and look. So like, it's all just like, it's this weird thing of like fate, chance, but also like your education, who you know, like your skills. So you just gotta have this like weird bubble of. So it works for some people, it doesn't work for others. Like, I don't know if I would have not met that guy and I would have applied for this job, I don't know if I would have gotten it. I mean, I have no clue, but he met me, he recognized my name, and he knew who I was. And he's like, I've talked to this kid before, like, she's cool. You know, I've talked to her about her work, like, and so my name stuck out in the pool of applicants. I mean, there were hundreds of people that applied for my job, but for some reason they hired me. And so it's just, I don't know, some of it's luck. But definitely it's all about who you know sometimes.
It kind of sucks that it does come down to who you know a lot of times, but it's just life now, you know. It works out for some people, and you know, but that is the ultimate thing though. If you go through this, if you stick to it long enough, you're gonna find something. You know what I mean? Like, it might not be your first choice, but you'll find something. You just gotta be diligent with it.
Hopefully so, yeah.
So. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Is there any, you know, I don't know if you're on social media or anything like that, or, you know, if you want to shout out yours or ARC or, you know, whatever, however people can, you know, find all the stuff y'all are doing.
Yeah, I'll shout out ARC's social media. I mean, I have social media. You can probably find it. There's absolutely nothing on it. I'm a lurker. I don't know very much, but yeah, I mean, you can go find it. It's my name, lowercase, on Instagram. I have a Facebook up. I don't use it, but there's some stuff on there. But yeah, you can. That's there. But I'll plug ARC. Go look for ARC Protects on Instagram. I think they have a Facebook account. Our website, arcprotects.org. Check us out. Pretty cool stuff. Great organization, doing amazing things in herp conservation. So yeah, check us out. We'd love your support. Even if it's just following our social medias and liking and engaging with posts, that'd be awesome.
We'll be sure to share that on our Flippin Tin story and stuff too, so you guys can follow the page and get some more info.
Yeah, we'll share the page on our story or something for sure. Well, thank you for your time. This has been an awesome episode. I know there's a lot of people that are super into Pituophis, so I think this will be a well-liked one. This was honestly Gabe's idea. We originally brought up, you know, another episode we're going to do, and Gabe was like, "Oh, why don't we talk Pituophis with Maddie too?" And I was like, "Hell yeah."
Yeah.
Sounds great. So
yes, thank you, Maddie. Man, we really enjoyed having you on, and like, I know I get to enjoy your company all the time. But now everyone else gets to know who you are. Thank you so much. I mean, what's better than talking about pits, right?
Cool.
We got to get you back on in spring or early summer though, so we can hear about what you did with the winter studies, and if you guys were able to get any answers, and then what kind of luck you're having for early breeding or what motion you got going on. Just be cool to kind of keep a little timeline going and touch base, and you know, just kind of keep up with everything, and that way we can keep ARC in the ear of people and keep the ball rolling with conservation in the best way we can, only way we can, spread the good word. Absolutely,
yeah. We love to come back and update you guys on what we find. I'm really interested in doing some hopefully long-term studies. Like, I want to see, you know, we caught her breeding this year. Will she breed next year? Like, what do they do? How does their habitat change? Do they stay in the same areas? So yeah, we'd love to update you on how they overwinter and what they do. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be super awesome, especially like over, like you said, in the long period, because that is something I've always been curious about. Or like, these snakes, are they breeding every year? Are they breeding every other year? Are they breeding every 5 years? You know, like, what's their cycle like? So yeah, we'll stay in touch and definitely do some follow-ups, you know.
That'd be awesome.
Hopefully we can catch a pine snake of our own in the meantime.
Yeah, I would love that. Jesus.
Get after it, yeah.
I'm trying, man.
You're in a great area, man.
You tell me that for a lot of shit, Gabe, and I'm about tired of hearing it.
I mean, that's not my fault.
You're in a great area to find coral snakes. You're in a great area to find diamondbacks. You're in a great area to find... Shut up. Okay, I know.
I had to drive to Europe
to make it
find
easy.
my wife for Diamondback. Okay, there's no excuse, Jake.
That's sad.
Yeah. Okay. again, it's all about who you know, and Gabe knows a lot more people than I do. So there
He
you
does
go.
know a lot of people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
If you
Gabe knows everybody.
come here, you go in a store, and if you take him with you, he's like a celebrity. They're like, "Is that Gabe Schuler?" I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
He's the Schuler man.
I went out the first time I went herping with this dude. Mind you, I had known Gabe for all of like maybe a month, and I was like, "Hey, dude, can I come crash at your house?" And he's like, "Yeah." So we went herping, and we went out to eat that night after herping all day, and then proceeded to run into somebody he knew. We talked outside of his truck for like 30 minutes, and I was like, "Gabe, I'm hungry."
grocery store, like, go home now. Stop talking. I want to go.
Yeah.
Home. Why do you know all these people?
Yeah, stop knowing so many people.
That's right. I know, man.
It's that small town life, man.
That's right.
That's that local celeb shit, bro.
Listen, I'm like the mayor of Honey Hill, don't you know?
Yeah. But with that said, this has been episode 19 of Flippin Tin. And with that, we'll hit you with our closing remarks. And that is look and you will see, read and you will learn, think and you will know. And that is from the Rattlesnakes of the United States and Canada. All right.
Thank you for
Good
your
night,
time,
everybody.
guys. We appreciate you.
Appreciate y'all.
Having me
All
on again.
right.